That is such a great practice to have, especially thinking about later years in dating,
Yes.
knowing that no is just as acceptable a response as yes,
Yes.
and that you are the only one who can give the yes or give the
Yeah.
no. And being able to have that practice from early on would be really
Yeah.
helpful. Well, we have some happy news at our house. We have grandbaby number 4 on the way,
Ooh,
and this is going to be grandbaby number 4 boy.
that's
So,
exciting.
God, it is. God has blessed me with boys, and I take it seriously because I know the role of a man in a relationship and being able to instill respect and honor and I mean so many things. So I'm super pumped and never knew this would be what would be happening in my life. But we're excited and doing things with young children takes me back. Things are a little different now
Mm-hmm.
than they were 30 plus years
Yep.
ago with my kids. And of course, my daughters are the boss, and I am following whatever parenting guidelines they have. I'm not just saying that to stay out of the doghouse. It's true. And actually, it gives me a relief because they are making up the rules. But I am learning some new things now so that I am responsible. And one of the things I'm learning about is child sexual abuse prevention. Whoa, quite a heavy topic. And I think it fits with our Sexual Wholeness Revival podcast because we believe that sexual intimacy is sacred. By God's design, it's this beautiful place in marriage. It's a place that both husband and wife can come fully alive and be restored, and just so many amazing things happen. So there's so much good in God's
Right.
design, and unfortunately, it has just been distorted and perverted in the world. And I feel really charged up to learn about this. So today, I do have some facts that I want to share because I want our parents and the audience to be prepared. And we are going to focus on that. And I think if I'm going to give this an umbrella question, it's going to be what can we do to protect our kids from sexual
It's
abuse?
so important. So important to be talking about this. So,
Yeah.
so when we know better, we do better, right? That's
Yep.
common sense. What are some things that parents need to know just right out of the gate?
Yes. And I'm going to see if I can number these just to help everybody stay on track. So, the things that parents need to know: number one, children can't identify abuse unless you teach them. Now, you're not demonstrating abuse as a way of teaching. You're demonstrating healthy boundaries and healthy labels and healthy interaction, so that you have to be able to tell them this is what is good, this is what is healthy, this is what we do as a family. That would be how you teach them. A second thing parents need to know is to use language for private parts and communicate what is safe versus unsafe touch. So, labels for private parts, safe touch, unsafe touch, giving specific examples. And then number three, this is something that parents, it might catch you off guard. That kid who's the happy-go-lucky kid who you're thinking, oh, nothing's ever bothered them, right? Well, maybe that's not accurate because kids put on masks. And if they stay silent about things, it could be because they blame themselves for what happened to them, abuse that they experienced that they didn't tell you about. It could also be that they were threatened by the perpetrator. And that just horrific to imagine what that is like for a young child to have that experience. But it's so big that maybe they have not felt comfortable saying anything. That's why we have to be proactive. And then I have a fourth thing that parents need to know, and these are unfortunately getting a little more scary and a little sadder as I go. And this one is the person most likely to abuse your child is the one you'd least likely expect.
Yeah.
And that means it's typically a family friend or a community leader or even an older sibling, which is just shocking. And I don't really want to elaborate on all of these examples. You just have to know that in the world we live in, these things are going on. And to be proactive, to be preventative, to be preemptive, all of that, those are things we can do, that when you do these things, you feel more peace that, okay, we have some things in place. And so that is definitely changing the odds for your family when you're being proactive.
Yeah, and I think it's really important to understand we don't want to partner with fear. We want to partner with wisdom.
Yeah.
And those will have two different fruits. Fear will produce the fruit of fear, and wisdom produces the fruit of wisdom. And so as you're navigating this, really, I just really want to encourage everyone to make sure that they feel grounded and centered and have the peace of the Lord so that they can
Amen.
partner with wisdom instead of coming out of a spirit of fear. Because our kids, whether they have language for it or not, they pick up on those things. And so when we're trying to be proactive, our goal is to remove fear and punishment. And so we need to be intentional as parents that we are coming from the place of wisdom and the peace and love of God. So don't partner with fear. Figure out what you can do before having some of these big conversations. But practically speaking, what instructions can parents give to their kids?
Yeah, well, we talked earlier about the private parts, and so I'm going to give a little bit more explanation here to tell your children that private parts are never looked at, never photographed, and never touched by others. And they have a right to say no to any physical touch. And there may be a little bit of a pushback there because a child might be, well, I don't want to take a bath. And, does that fall in that category? And then there would be an explanation that some things are must do because we need you to be clean, we need you to be healthy, we need for you to be safe. So if that sounds like an older child who might push back on that kind of a comment, but this also applies if a doctor is present, and knowing that a doctor will be there only when it's to help you be healthy and clean and safe, and knowing that a doctor only in the room with you when you're with a parent. So there is a second person there, a trusted person there. That is definitely going to make things safer. And thinking about who are the trusted adults, you can give that kind of list to your child and be specific. Obviously, in an ideal situation, we want for all family members to be trusted adults, but that might not be the case. And it's okay. You don't have to belabor the point if there's a certain family member that does not have that proximity to your child. Just make sure they know who is safe. And then we are talking about safe adults will only look and touch to keep clean and healthy. And I don't know if the kids are going to push back on this, but I really wanted to make that clear. Always explain what they're doing and why they're doing that. And that's comforting, even as an adult, when there's a doctor that says, okay, you might feel a little pressure here. Okay, stay with me right now and it'll be over. So we want to begin doing that with our children so that they are a part of the process. They're getting educated while they're being taken care of. Here's something else. We want to give choices whenever possible. so that children are feeling more in control of what's happening. And as I said, there might be some times where we have to go ahead into the bath time or the doctor's time that may be out of the norm. But as long as children know that they are with their safe adult, then that brings safety and trust to the situation. And I know, Katie Ann, your kids are younger and you've probably had more of these conversations more recently than I have. And I would love to hear how this has played out for you.
Yeah, I think first it is the spirit of fear versus the spirit of wisdom. Our goal is to cast out fear with our kids. And so having these conversations at not only age appropriate times, but appropriate times in our family settings is something that maybe isn't the easiest for people to navigate. However, when one of my daughters was a toddler, she needed a special cream for her private area. And I remember having a conversation with her when she was that little of, hey, this is only okay for mommy to do. And, here's why we're doing it. And no one else should be doing this. And she really understood it. And I remember going on a trip and in her little 4-year-old voice going, what about my cream? And it was like, it can wait until I get home. And so there was some awareness to, hey, this isn't, but it wasn't fearful. It was more of, what do I do about this thing since you're not here? And I think with the kid, we have 3 girls and then we had a boy. And when he was born, I was a bit dumbfounded as to, what do I do? Like, obviously, he has very different plumbing than his older sisters. And it's very noticeable. And, this was their baby as much as he was my baby that I just gave birth to. It was, they were all 3 little mommies. And I remember the midwife that I had at the time, I was feeling overwhelmed and scared. I mean, I was really nervous about this. And she said, kids have a natural curiosity. So talk to them, answer their curiosity. She said, I oftentimes see parents giving way too much information before a child is ready. I think that simplifying this conversation is really, really helpful. Otherwise, we can overwhelm them and they never want to bring it up again. So if something scary does happen, they're like, I don't want to bring it up, because when we tried to have this conversation, they were so overwhelmed or scared. I think that those were some really helpful things for me. Just kept it really simple. We kept it really simple. Your private parts are called private for a reason, and just talking about what's appropriate and what's not appropriate without adding in fear. And I think that's the other thing that I would really want to encourage people in, is that if you have been abused, the tendency is to put your trauma and filter these conversations through your trauma and pain. And so we can inadvertently put that on our children. And so this is a really important thing of why we are so passionate about Sexual Wholeness Revival, is because we don't want to pass that trauma down to our kids, because we're trying to raise them or have these discussions around these challenging topics from a very unhealed place. And so we don't want to be putting our trauma on them as we're trying to help them navigate, especially when they're so little. They're so little. Protect their innocence.
Amen. In every way possible. And I just love how creative God is. So there are times when He will just give you an idea and some language to use with your child that fits that moment, that feels safe. It feels sweet. It still feels like they are a child and they don't have to carry more than they need to carry.
I loved how you put that, Mary, that they don't need to carry more than what they need to carry. And this is why we really need to be in tune to Holy Spirit, that He is helping us along in every step to navigate these challenging conversations. So, what are some rules to help protect our children? How would you say this?
I did quite a bit of research to come up with this list, so these are not my words, but I know that these are sound ideas here. Don't keep secrets. And safe people will never ask you to.
Yep, that's huge.
And sometimes it's teasing, like grandparents, which of course I'm in that category, and oh, one more piece of candy, it'll just be our secret. I'm like, no, don't even start that. That is just not the way that we want to address things. So no secrets. Secrets, I don't know, a Christmas gift, maybe that could be a secret.
Right.
If you want a positive use for that, but not in this situation. Number 2, our bodies are our bodies. They are our own. And we ask others before we enter their body bubbles, and we expect them to do the same for us. So a body bubble, just picturing what your space is and what your area is, and knowing that as a young child that you have a right to that space. Yep. And with that right also means that you can say yes or no when someone else is trying to approach your body bubble. And you can also tell them what they can and can't do. And I know that's going to take a lot of language. Now, this body bubble idea is new to me. Katie Ann, is that a word that you used, or how did you describe that?
I never said body bubble. That's not necessarily language we would use in our house. But if somebody didn't want to wrestle, if somebody didn't want to, I grew up in a house where we had a lot of physical play, like wrestling, because I grew up with brothers, and so that's transferred over to our family. And so the body bubble looked more like, if they say no, it means no, even if we're playing.
Wow.
And that's a hard one, because I grew up in a family where even if I said no, like the wrestling and stuff would continue. And so the body bubble looked like, if our child says no, this isn't fun, then we look at that and we honor their no, this isn't fun. And we taught them the same goes for their siblings.
And that is such a great practice to have, especially thinking about later years in dating.
Yes.
Knowing that no is just as acceptable a response as yes. And that you are the only one who can give the yes or give the no. And being able to have that practice from early on would be really helpful.
Yeah, and that was a conversation my husband and I had. And even in playfulness, it was, hey, if we don't honor their no when they say no, then what we're teaching them, that if somebody's bigger than them and they say, oh, I'm just playing, their no means nothing. And so we need to, this is our opportunity to instill powerfulness and good boundaries in them now. And so it really was like, didn't think of it like that, because oftentimes it's harmful, and so it really was a great lesson for us as parents to go, all because we think we're just having fun.
Yeah.
It means no, and we get to teach our children that it means something.
From a young age. All right, I'm on number 3, and this language might fit something that's more comfortable for me and maybe those in our audience also, to describe private parts as the areas that your swimsuit covers. And so that's a visual. Now, it's interesting because I'm in Florida and my little grandsons have full body swimsuits.
To protect from the sun.
Exactly. And they have hats on and goggles. Well, maybe not goggles, but, the whole bit. And maybe it's a good point to even laugh about that when you're having some of these descriptions. But the areas that the swimsuit covers, and your eyes, ears, and mouth as private parts. That probably is the part that surprised me, eyes, ears, and mouth. So just saying, it's not appropriate to look at or touch yours or each others. It's one thing to say no when someone's trying to do it to you. It's another thing to make yourself stop
Yep.
when you're considering doing it to someone else.
Yeah.
Number 4, if somebody breaks a body safety rule, which would mean crossing one of the lines as far as the private areas, then we can say no, try to get away, and tell a trusted adult. And this sounds like more than just in the family room wrestling kind of situation. And that even if you as a child were to freeze up at that moment and you weren't able to yell or run, that it is still not your fault.
So important.
Ever. And that you're so very brave when you're able to tell.
Yeah, it's so important. I remember one of my kids, I don't remember which one, but I remember from an early age their struggle with shame. And I remember sitting there going, how do they have so much shame? They've barely lived life. And so that is one of the things that the enemy knows that is part of our human struggle and our walk with the Lord. And so from a very young age, he wants to introduce this message of shame, which is like putting a hand over our mouth. And for our young kids, I think when these things might happen, they're combating the intensity of feeling ashamed. And so to communicate like it's never your fault and that it is brave to tell is really, really helpful. And that was part of the conversation I had when my kids were littler. They're all teenagers, all but one are all teenagers now. And so it is really important that we are proactively reinforcing the value of love and safety to counteract the shame that the enemy wants to bring.
Yes, and number 5 is it's always safe to tell a trusted adult when a body safety rule has been broken, even if someone said something bad will happen. You will not get in trouble if you tell.
Yeah, this is goes back to the shame piece.
Yeah.
We don't want them stuck in these shame cycles, and so being proactive to create a safe place to make our love believable goes a long ways in these situations. I want to create an environment or a relational connection with my kids in such a way that they would rather tell me than not tell me. And I'm seeing that play out with some of their choices that they make. They go, I made a poor choice, and I'm going straight to my mom with it. And it really is because of years and years of sowing into my kids that there's nothing you could do that would make me love you less. And so that is one of the tools that abusers use is something bad will happen if you tell. And so on the back end of it, as parents, we can be actively pursuing their hearts and creating a safe place where love is believable with them. When somebody tells them that, they're going to know, wait a minute, something's wrong. This isn't love.
Yeah.
And so that's why being proactive about it is so incredibly important.
And that is showing when love is the language in your family and in your home, that is the original that they are recognizing and identifying and flowing, and that's their currency. When love is their currency, they will recognize the counterfeit. They will recognize the lie because this doesn't feel right. This doesn't feel like what I experience with my family. Yeah. And it would just be, I'm thinking this through as I'm talking about how you need to give examples, but you don't want to give an example that's going to increase fear.
Yes.
So that would be great to rely on Holy Spirit to show you an example in that moment. And I know, and this is not on my list at all, but just big picture, thinking about other friends and family members and what goes on in their home, and how do you even know? So that's why we want to protect our child and educate our child and provide a system, a way for them to share what they're experiencing.
Yeah. So good.
Well, as you're listening to this, you may have had some things come up in your own mind, maybe some abuse situations that you experienced as a child. Maybe you haven't walked through all the healing that you want. I do know that it does affect you for a lifetime until you're able to release some of that to God and get some healing and freedom. So you may want to reach out to Katie Ann or I if you have experienced child abuse and were not able to process it yet. Also, if you are feeling hesitation and maybe more fear than wisdom in speaking with your children, we would love to be a sounding board for you with that as well. So feel free, I'm going to have the links here in the show note. Feel free to reach out to Katie Ann or I to get some support as you walk through this role. And as a parent, you continue to model how we believe that sexual intimacy is a sacred gift from God in marriage.
Yes. And until next time, let's bring back wholeness.